Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Junk to Jules podcast with Georgette Beck. I'm so excited you're here today, listening or watching. I look forward to introducing Terri Dennis to you. She's a dear friend of mine, and I can't wait to hear her story, guys. There's a lot of levels here. Parents, I'm just giving a warning. There's going to be some deep content you may want your younger ones not to be listening to. We're going to be talking about some serious life experiences. So just giving that warning up front. But I do want to give a plug for the book. Junk to Jules occurred, you guys. Junk to Jules got published after a lot of years. So as this podcast is all about inspiring, encouraging, and reminding y'all, go for your dreams, go for it. It's never too late to pursue. So let me introduce you to Terri before we're going to just get into it. So Terri Dennis is someone I knew through my husband, Scott Beck, and it's through the Port St. Lucie Police Department that I first met her. She actually walked through the doors of our lay ministry, divorce care, and that'll come up in our story, I'm sure. But we got to work with Terri one-on-one and mentor her through a life challenge and a life loss. And it was awesome and beautiful. We got to know her heart, and she's a beautiful woman. So Terri grew up in a family that was a part of a church that was not the best of churches in all the world, and she'll talk about that. She then served in the Marines, so she is a woman all out for the service of her country and mankind. Marine Corps, that's the correct way. Thank you, Terri. The Marine Corps, we want to get it right, that's for sure. So I just want to say...
That's my other cult, but it's a good one.
So the Marine Corps, and then she found her way into the Port St. Lucie Police Department and served there. Gosh, it was like
24 and some years.
I think it was 24 years of service. Yeah. And then Terri had a near-death experience. So she's had it up and down and in between, the awesomeness to horrific. So I am just going to welcome her now. Welcome to the podcast, Terri Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend.
So let's dive in. Tell us about your childhood and your upbringing a little bit there.
First thing that comes to mind, I think I had a great childhood. And when I say that, I'm talking about my parents, our home, very happy-go-lucky kid. Even though the way we were raised is very restrictive, was Christian-based, but we'll get into why it was not a good thing. Not the Christian part, but men have great ways of ruining the word of God. So I'll explain that later.
In all of time that happened.
Yes, because it took many years. I was an adult and married before I went to Morningside. Was the first church, other than in Marine Corps boot camp, we looked forward to church on Sundays because it was the only free hour we had. But I didn't walk into a church until, gosh, it was Morningside. And I honestly was inside, like my heart pounding, like lightning was going to strike. I was literally waiting on it.
That was your first time back in a church setting, a public setting after your pain.
Correct. And I'm not exaggerating. I literally was like, is lightning going to strike? It was terrifying.
There he is.
But you know, my ex-husband's parents were heavily involved in the church. You guys were in that church. My brain was like, these are not the same as what I grew up learning. This is not the same. But anyway, I'd say I had a great childhood, but the bad parts, I would say, revolve around, I have a very young memory of some sexual abuse,
and that was from someone in the church?
I was very little. So it's one of those, I worked sex crimes, so I learned very well how people retain memories. And so it's like snapshots, and I can feel the physical pain.
Correct.
If I think about it. But I know I was so little because I remember being lifted up and laid on some sort of table or dresser. But it was a first cousin.
Okay.
So I know his mother, my mother's sister, who she was a nice lady and she was very good to my mother. So she just had their father was crappy, not present. And her sons were just not good people. Yeah, so I never told
Were you able to tell anybody?
I never told my mother until I was, I believe, 33. And by then, me and mom were like best friends. And I decided to tell her because then I had become a detective and worked a lot of sex crimes.
And that's not on accident.
And I felt I was able to articulate it to her. And I was afraid and even contemplated not doing it. But I learned that she was abused, which she blurted out when I was 16. She was 38. It was her 38th birthday.
Wow.
And she blurted it out. So
this was something she kept secret and private.
Correct. To just protect everyone. And
so I was learning, I don't know if you ever heard of they're generational repeats, like generational repeats, positive decisions, education decisions, and a lot of the like mental health repeats, suicide attempts, disconnects. And genograms show it. And a lot of times the family, because they don't share it, so it happens again and again, like people, but her sharing it, I think was such an act of bravery and you sharing it with her. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah. She suffered from severe depression. And I remember I had my first diary and I wish I still had it because I carried it with me forever. It has Snoopy on it. And I remember the first entry was 1975. I was born in 70, so I was 5 years old and already writing. So, and I would write her letters like, Mommy, why can't you be happy? Because I didn't understand what clinical depression was.
Yeah.
And it was like that moment. I think that's the moment I became a detective too, because I went to the person. She's gone now, so it's not going to hurt anybody. It was her father.
That hurt her.
And that was my grandpa, who I was extremely close to. But he never did anything to me. And so I went directly to him and confronted him.
You did?
Direct, because they lived right next door. I was 16.
This was after she told you?
Yeah, and he was my everything. Because
that's the beginning of your being the advocate and warrior, defender.
Yeah, we would sit. They lived right next door. They didn't share a room, but I remember everything started to make sense. My grandma would always make sure the door was open.
The little thing.
In their days, nobody divorced. You didn't divorce. Now, my grandma, her mom, went to the church too. Good lady. But he did not. He never went to church.
So what did he say when you confronted him?
Oh, so in our church, they didn't believe in counseling. So we didn't really know what that was. Like, we didn't know what police were.
They didn't do that.
We didn't know what counseling and
nobody told anybody either.
We weren't allowed to have newspaper, television. Like, we didn't know anything like that. So, but
do you have siblings?
I have two older sisters.
Okay.
The youngest of three, and they're still in that church.
In the church?
Yeah, just different pastor.
You were a part of this church since being a little girl?
I was born into it.
Yeah. Born into it.
Yeah.
And it's an extreme church, as in they make their own man-made rules and they go way off of what the Bible says.
They are. Am I allowed to say the name of the church? I mean, it's
general, like it's a public church.
You could probably Google it.
What's the name of the
Apostolic Pentecostal Church of West Palm Beach?
Wow. That's right here in our area.
It's right off of Meridian Road in West Palm Beach.
And where were you born?
Boynton Beach.
Okay.
But we lived
So you're Floridian.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
was born in Bethesda and Boynton Beach, but we lived in West Palm Beach. So
wow.
I was a preemie, and so my mom had to wait a little bit. She always tells the story because I was dead. They told her I was stillborn while she was pregnant, and she was like, no, and the doctor could never find a heart.
Oh my gosh, just take a moment. Pregnant mamas everywhere. The doctors told you, doctors told your mom that
she was carrying 100% not alive. Yeah. They could never.
But she delivered you alive.
And she kept saying she was 20. So third baby at 20. Can you imagine?
A miracle.
I still think about that and I go,
That's a miracle
oh
because
God.
most times when doctors tell a mom it's stillborn, they plan the procedure.
Yeah, no, she refused. She told the story my whole life.
You were you were meant to come, Terri. That's it. What a miracle.
I mean, I know we don't have the same technology, but to not find a heartbeat, I find that.
Yeah.
I mean, I never had children. Isn't it just a stethoscope where they find a heartbeat?
Yeah, I don't understand all the science behind, but most times they could pick it up somewhere.
And like, did they have ultrasounds in the
I don't know. I don't know, but they can hear the heartbeat.
But surely, right?
No.
So, nope, my mother, she was like, nope, my baby's alive. My baby's alive. And
hey, mama.
And they thought she was crazy. They just were like, she's crazy.
That's what they said about a lot of women who are very strong and passionate in their own beliefs and opinions.
I believe she knew. I believe she felt me. I mean,
intuitively knew.
I can't.
I'm sure she felt
say
you.
This, but I could imagine women pregnant if they were told that, but they believed it. They felt something. I would probably venture to say they know, unless they were truly in denial.
Yeah.
But
wow,
I don't know what they would do if they would
your entrance.
Just done a cesarean and take me out and I would have been alive. Could you imagine? Like, but either way, visit after visit, they were just like, Marianne.
Yeah, we don't sense life here. Wow.
I think I was told I was a boy. However, so they must have had ultrasounds. Yeah, because I was male. They determined the sex was male. So she had a name, Richard Anthony Dennis.
Already.
My name. Yep. So everybody was getting ready to have a boy. And
love it.
And then the bad news.
Sense to your strength, girl.
And then the bad news comes that I'm not alive. And they were like, there is no heartbeat. There is nothing. And she was like, nope. And so she would go home and she would jog around our house that my father built, bless his heart. Literally watched my father build it with my uncle and his brother.
Wow.
Bricks and hammers. And I got pictures of it, built our home. And so she would run around and she'd get on top of remember the tanks where they hold the salt pebbles?
For water?
Like for water.
I don't remember the name.
Salt pellets, I know, because I used to open it, take a pebble and lick on the salt.
Wow.
But she would get on that and then jump off and then keep running to try to make me move or whatever.
Yeah.
And she just wasn't going to accept it. So they didn't force her into any procedure. They just let it be and figured she'd give birth to stillborn. So comes the time where she, I guess, goes into labor, even though I was premature. I was 4 pounds, 8 ounces.
Wow.
So
the fact back then that you survived even that after being born, because I know a dear friend, a family member, very close to my heart. She was in a top-notch hospital in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And her baby, she was a month preemie, 2 months, and they couldn't save the baby. And with all the high tech, what a miracle. So now you're twice a miracle in my head. Yeah. So let's count. Throughout your story, I'm going to count because that's twice now. Very young as a
when I was telling my story, but
that's a lot of.
Yeah. So my father, who is a very big man, 6'4", 300 pounds, he could hold me in his.
So precious.
And have room.
See, and there's life at that small.
So so her doctor and this other, I guess it's an obstetrician, I don't know. They were at some event. She said they were in tuxedos and everything. And they get a call and they said, hey, Marianne, she's going to give birth. She's going to give birth.
I bet they weren't that excited because they were thinking, oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. This is.
Yeah, she talks about it because for all intents and purposes, she really liked her main doctor. And I do remember him, believe it or not. He was my baby doctor. He was an older man, but yeah, I remember his waiting room and the swivel chairs and everything, the retro. Yeah.
I love it.
It's crazy that I remember that. But yeah, he went and this other specialist came and she said they were all decked out in tuxedos because they were at some function. And I don't know if they got word or whatever, but something made them rush over there because they were like,
What's happening?
the baby's alive.
Yeah.
The baby's alive. And they were like, we have to see this for ourselves because there's just no way.
Yeah.
Like it went against everything they believed and knew. And she said they came and they ended up whisking me away, I think, probably because I was preemie. And so she didn't even get like anything. But she said they were there and they were like in shock, complete shock.
Yes.
That I was alive, and they were astounded.
Yeah.
And they said, and we're wrong, and it's not a boy, it's a girl.
She's alive and she's a girl.
Alive and a girl. And then they had to put me wherever, I guess, incubator or whatever, till I could grow. And then a few days later, I guess a nurse, she came in and my mom said she was crying real quiet, which she would. She's not throwing a fit. But she's crying and she said this lady, maybe a CNA or something, was like, honey, why are you crying? And she goes, because I haven't seen my baby. And the lady said, you haven't seen your baby? Hold on. And she goes, and she was able to see me for the first time after 3 days.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
So here I am.
Phil,
and I'm like, boy, not preemie now. 5'8". I'm pushing. Well, I ain't even going to say it on here.
All right. So your upbringing, you're in Florida and your parents are part of this church.
Yeah, sorry.
So
if I go on a tangent, just smack me.
We're good. So, but why was it extreme? Why do you think it was extreme, you think? They controlled your whole life? They controlled the family? Like, controlled
it? Okay, so there was this church started in a storefront. Okay, and my parents joined. They were teenagers. Like my mom was like 14.
So they grew up in it too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then my father's parents were in church. So my grandpa Dennis, and Grandma Atkins was my mom's mom.
Okay.
So they went to the church as well.
Okay.
And so the church grew and they'd have evangelists come. And this man, he was an evangelist, very charismatic.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know anything about Pentecostals.
I do.
But they're very
began in a Bethel
holy
family. Yeah. And then there was the Protestant churches, faith churches. So I'm aware of the evangelistic.
Yeah, speaking in tongues, dance, and I mean, we would do cartwheels, somersaults, run around the church like a track. I mean, the worship was loud and wild, and which I actually still like it.
Yeah, I love that kind of worship.
I used to leave our church and go downtown, which was predominantly black at the time, where City Place is, and go to their churches when ours would end because they were still having church till 1 in the morning. So the preacher's oldest daughter, she could drive and we'd beat feet and we'd go over there because we were so into the music and choir. We did have good music, I'll give it that. And that was my favorite part about church. But no, that church was so evangelist, the preacher. His name's not coming to me real quick, but I do know.
It's okay.
But he got too old. And so the congregation, they built that church where I told you I went. And they needed a permanent pastor. So however they do it back then, they got together and he became the pastor of that church.
Okay.
And that was 1975. I know I was 5.
Okay.
And that was that. And everybody thought this was just dream come true.
Yeah.
They loved them. Yeah.
So then what age were you, how long were you a part of the church? To what age?
Oh, all my life until he got in my face one night because he does that to people. He's very abusive. physically, verbally, emotionally. Like, I could tell you story after story, but he did not like me. And I committed a sin, which was premarital sex.
You're not the only one to have done that particular sin.
Which I was 14.
Yeah.
Guy came in, it's the first time he filled those butterflies, and him and his mom joined, and it's a handsome Puerto Rican guy. And there were the butterflies, and yeah, he just kind of smoothed his way right in. I mean, I didn't even know. I had the mentality of like a 10-year-old. It's whatever.
Normal to be interested in a boy.
But it was my deep, dark secret. And boy, did I repent. I laid at that altar begging God to forgive me. But that is a major sin. I kept that a secret, of course. And of course, it would have devastated my parents.
Okay.
So I knew that was bad. And that guy ended up being abusive, literally would beat me up for no reason. So I had the strength. I don't know where it came from, but he would just hit me for no reason, come over and visit. Then Terri flipped. I don't know where that came from, but I was like, no, you will not hit me. Wow. And get out of my life. That's
amazing.
And I got rid of him.
Wow, that's amazing. Inner strength to say no to that.
I don't know where it came from because I am the nicest, kindest, but for some reason that just...
I think that's God looking out
me around. Like we're walking down the road young and thinking we're in love and just no reason.
Yeah, that's nasty. That's abusive.
I don't even have a memory of a reason why.
And you knew it.
You knew it. I just knew. For
you.
Wow. No.
That's so strong.
And I stood up to him and was like, oh, heck no.
Yeah.
Get lost as far away. And then shortly after, I remember him and his mother left. You're not even going to believe this. I'm in high school now. He's gone. Secret's still a secret. Kind of moved on from it. I repented so many times.
And God forgave you when you...
And yes, agree. Right but then you don't
as a kid,
feel like it, but you just keep begging God to forgive you. But I knew if that got out, it would be, oh my God.
In the
scarlet letter. Yeah. I remember like hearing that in school and I was like, not married, but you might as well have put an S for something else on my chest, tattooed it. I mean, it was that bad. And there's sex abuse, domestic violence that they know about that gets swept right under the rug. Yet what I did, way worse.
Right.
Way worse. Why, I don't know.
Right.
But I'm not even, that's 100% the truth. So I remember being in school, which I'm thinking, God, these days, like if that would happen, he would have been in prison. He came, got into the school.
Your pastor?
No, the guy.
Boyfriend?
The guy.
Okay.
Who I think is gone now. Now his mother would call me because we had landlines then.
This is after you broke up?
Oh yeah. And then him and his mom left the church. So he was history. I never thought I'd see him ever again. And it was like
into your high school?
A huge relief.
Yeah.
He came to my school. We're out in the courtyard, like on a recess. And then he just comes waltzing in, picks me up, carries me out, and he's walking towards the parking lot.
Oh.
And I am freaking out, fighting him off. So I get loose of him, and he was like, let me digress. When his mother would call, she would threaten me that because I was intimate with her son, that we're married in God's eyes. And
so she knew about...
Yeah, he must have told her because it was her, and she would call and say, wow, you belong to my son.
Wow.
And I was like, no, I don't.
Right. No, you don't.
And don't ever call my house again. Right. So
that's crazy. That is crazy stuff.
Crazy, right?
Right.
True story. So
and what?
Didn't tell my parents about those calls, but I was like, well, I think, God, I have never thought about it much, but God, imagine if they even heard that call.
No. Yeah.
Oh my God. So yeah, to get to the end of that, he threatened that if I didn't come with him, that he was going to go to the pastor and tell on me.
And that was still a big fear.
He left school and drove there. And within an hour, I think the loudspeaker comes on, Terri Dennis report to the principal's office. And there sat my mother like a stone.
They told
like
her.
This.
They told the mom.
Yeah, because he went to the pastor. Their home was behind the church. So he went, he told, and stayed at their house.
Oh my gosh.
And they called my mother. My mother came, took me out of school, brought me to their house. And then the preacher, and there was like a whole room full of people from
And they
church.
shamed you. They publicly shamed
100,
you.
totally. They put me through a prayer gauntlet and then proceeded to tell me I was a whore, I was dirty.
That's damaging
all those
to your
things.
psyche
When you
as a
get
young
married,
girl.
you will
Yeah.
not be allowed to wear white. Do you understand what you've done? Blah, 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 blah. So I accepted it and everything like that. And the only good memory I have of that day was one, I couldn't wait to get out of there. Two, my father wasn't there. But I do remember my mother went up to the guy and she grabbed him by his shirt and she got in his face and she said, I suggest you get on your motorcycle
Go.
and drive as far away from here as possible. And you're lucky that Terry's dad is not here or you wouldn't be alive. So I suggest you get as far away as possible
And he did.
and
Did
don't
he?
ever come near my daughter or our family
I
again.
love that. Mama, go.
And he
Go, Mama.
bolted and I've never seen or heard from him since.
Mama power.
Thank you, Mom.
Yeah. Oh my God. All right, let's go further up the chain because we got a lot. You got a lot of parts of you. So you always had big dreams in your heart and they were bigger than everyone around you. And guess what? That's okay because they come true. So Terri always had the big dreams and people just couldn't understand around you and would dish you on it, but you never stopped pursuing it. And I love that. Your very first boss was a mentor to you as you transition out of the
Correct.
occult. Yeah. You want to talk about him for a second?
Wherever you want to go.
Yeah, your first mentor. Who is this? As you're coming out of the occult, you're integrating, you call it, back into normal society.
Yeah.
How to be.
Well, I
What
was
was
still
that?
in the church when I started working for him. The cork board with job postings. We didn't have computers.
What kind of job was it?
It was just secretary, but then it became bigger. I was like his right hand office manager. I did everything. The only thing I didn't do was I did bookkeeping, but I didn't do the major accounting.
Yeah.
We had a CPA for that. But he was an architect, and then a lot of his work was construction litigation. So
That's an awesome opportunity.
he would
you
go
grew
and
into
do
it.
inspections. Yeah, he was a GC, so and
General contractor.
Yeah, general contractor and an architect. So
That's pretty impressive.
he worked for a few builders and stuff, which he'd make
Big in our
specific
area here.
changes. Yeah, still around. So every time I hear Lennar, I think of them.
Now, you
But-
went into the military service, Marine Corps.
He saw
How
me.
did that happen?
So he saw me. I looked Amish because the way we dressed. So I got that job still in church. I was also 16, 17, but I was still in high school. So I was part-time.
Okay.
And then he was like uncle. In fact, he became my dad's first man friend that I ever saw my dad have a real, genuine friend.
Wow.
Like a man
That's a
friend.
solid, good person right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because my dad did leave the church before I did, but that's a different story. So we'll just skip. But he did leave, but he was not approving when I ended up leaving. He was like, pack your crap and get out.
Yeah.
But that's how strong
Your head, yeah.
and he believed he was going to hell.
Right.
And he was like, I am, but that's okay because I am and I chose, but now you are. And he was very angry.
Right. He didn't want you to go to hell.
Yeah.
He didn't.
So I had that job. Yeah, obviously, because you can't hide it. My hair's down to my knees, the dress, long sleeves. People would ask me if I was Amish, Mormon, Mennonite, I looked like Laura Ingalls, literally.
From Little House on the
Growing up
Prairie.
with the freckles and braids.
Right.
Everything.
Old fashioned.
Oh, yeah. So
how did he bring them?
when you say
Where did
apostolic
military?
Pentecostal, nobody knew what that was in school or anything. But they just accepted me. It was him, a part-time draftsman, and our bookkeeper who would come and go. But they just accepted me as I was.
Yeah.
You know? And then when all of, like, that whole incident, it always stayed with me. He never, in fact, he did what they call a sit down, which after he was told I played violin in church, which is a privilege. They took that away, and then they did what they call a sit down. So I had to sit in a pew for 2 years.
Wow.
And it probably would have been longer until I finally yanked on my dad's coat and was like, Dad, how long am I going to sit here?
Right.
And so, yeah, after 2 years, 2 years, you sit down, you can't worship with everyone. I mean, I could pray, but you just don't move. You don't get up. No one's allowed to speak to you. I couldn't go out with the young people and socialize.
Sounds like a lot of these.
Nobody's allowed to socialize with you. So I just went with my parents home to church, and church was 4 times a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and twice on Sunday. And you didn't miss. It's like a job. Like, you better not,
Correct.
You better be dying. I mean, I saw them one time. Somebody was so sick. They went, picked him up and brought him on the mattress into the church. That's how fanatical.
Yeah.
So yeah, that went on for 2 years. So I just sat there.
So bring us to the military.
Then, so
this come about the Marine Corps.
So then this carried on. And then I was late one night. Preacher comes on, starts church. Then he gets off his organ. He comes running down, and he's screaming and spitting in my face, like calling me names. Who do I think I am? Coming in late, and something snapped. And I was holding on to the pew in front of me. Guy sat next to my grandma, and my mom was over here. And I remember my mom came over, and I remember whispering to me, just go repent, just go repent. She wanted me to just play along to make it stop.
Keep it peaceful.
And I remember I looked at her and I said, I didn't do anything wrong. And I didn't. So I stood there and just let him scream. And I just stood there like a stone. And I was, look at me, grabbing the chair.
Yeah.
I remember just holding on to the pew in front of me and just staring straight ahead while he's screaming and spitting.
Yikes.
And I was like, I'm not moving, because I knew I didn't do anything. And I just couldn't fake it. I couldn't.
No.
I couldn't go fake it.
Yeah.
And that was it. And because I had a very cool mom, she loved music and I loved music. So she let me listen to worldly music, Jackson 5 and Barbara Streisand at home. And I started to like rock and roll in middle school. And so she let me listen to worldly music at home. But so
the military.
Get my train. Yeah.
Coming to the military.
Yeah,
How did she get into the Marine Corps, guys?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know. What led her there?
Sorry, the short-term memory does this. Okay, so, this is why it's relative. So I snuck with my mom's permission and took guitar lessons because I thought I was going to learn these rock and roll songs like Def Leppard to be exact. So I meet this guy who's the teacher. He's a little older than me. We're still like the best of friends. And to this day, good guy. And he was the teacher. So I went to the local store and I still had the outfit. He wasn't an educated guy, but he's one of those just brilliant people.
Yes.
Just a book reader.
Yeah, I love that.
I mean, you don't need a degree to be. Some people are just brilliant.
Yeah.
And so he actually comprehended what I was in, whereas I did not. But he never pushed anything on me or anything like that. But slowly, he would ask questions that would make me think. So we became friends. Nothing else, nothing inappropriate. Very much a gentleman, but he knew she's in a cult.
Right.
He knew. And so when I decided not to go back, told my parents, that's when my dad was like, pack your stuff and get out. I had nowhere to go.
Right.
I knew one person, and it was that guy, and I had his number.
Right.
And I cold called him, and I was like, you're the only person in the world that I know outside of church.
Right.
And because if you leave, you're cut off from everyone.
Correct.
Family, everybody. They're done with you. And I mean, it's not like they take a while to think. You leave, you're done.
That's not like a lot of other things our society has heard about.
He came and picked me up, and thank God. And they had some like clothes in a Goodwill bag. And it was the first time I wore pants. They gave me a pair of peach sweatpants and a t-shirt. First time in my life I wore pants. And the rest is history. So, of course, I go to work and I let them know I left. And they were like, oh, okay. And then Fred, they listened and were very sympathetic and understanding and supportive and just, hey, you got a job and if you need anything and just, we're here for you. And, and they kind of helped me guide what things were out in the world. There's a gym. There's you could get counseling or you could get, there's church. Like he was very Christian.
Okay.
And his children, he lived a very Christian life. So it was like, hey, this is not normal. There's other churches, they don't act like this.
Right. Correct.
And he lived that example, and so did his children. And I could see that. But I was always taught every other religion, you're going to hell.
Right.
They're all fake. They're all of the devil. Only this church. That's what I was taught from birth.
Yeah.
So now I have people saying that's not true. So
it's challenging to you.
It's challenging.
So what brought you to the Marine Corps? I'm dying to know.
So I worked for him 6 years, and then in our church, because we didn't have TV, because the preacher, it's always what he wants. So remember when you could go to the public library and you could rent, remember the
VHS?
16? No. Oh no, that was way in the future. They didn't allow that till I was long gone. And then I think eventually, like he would do it, but only him and his family. Yeah, not the congregation. But remember
the reels?
16, 18, what do you call them? They're
reels of a movie.
With a projector.
Yes, yeah.
And public library, you could rent films, and they're all documentaries or after school specials or educational stuff, right?
Okay, yeah.
So he ended up allowing that.
Okay.
And so my mom loved to throw parties, which our parties were popcorn and soda and hanging out and playing games, board games. That's what we did. And then when he allowed us to be able to rent films, we rented films because as long as it was something approved, which was literally like welcome to Amazon or no cursing, no sinning, nothing like that, no sex, no.
It was approved,
but one of the films was it had real footage, and it was the FBI's plot to catch John Dillinger.
Oh my goodness!
Do you know who that is?
John Dillinger, I've heard of him.
Okay. Yeah. So infamous bank robber from the 30s. So for any of you who's ever seen the Johnny Depp movie, I think it's called, he plays Dillinger.
Yeah.
Public Enemy, I believe it's called.
So go ahead.
So that's John Dillinger.
Yeah.
And he was famous because he'd be dressed in striped suits and flashy. So people kind of liked him. He had a Peter Pan too, because he'd give some money, I think, to not have
Robin Hood. He's the Robin Hood kind of guy.
Well, I got addicted to that movie because in the movie, it tells the story of the girl he was dating, how they went to a movie and she wore this red hat, red dress. And that was the signal to the FBI, because he was the most wanted person in the world, to recognize him.
That this is him.
Because somebody finally was going to turn him in.
Oh,
and I think they were going to I think they were going to deport her. So, because she wasn't American. So she cooperated, and that's how they caught him.
Okay. So after that,
Well, that obsession, because every time my mom would go, I'd be like, can you rent that documentary again? Can you rent that? And I was obsessed with how the FBI would work. And
right.
and then that led me to know what the FBI was. And then I was like, then my brain, which has always been interested in psychology and how things work and what makes people tick. And that, remember the Time Life books?
Time Life.
The hardcover Time Life books. They would sell them at the door like the encyclopedias.
Yes.
My mom bought the true crime series for me, which I still have.
Feet in the fire.
So I have the mass murder, serial killer, mafia, all of that. I still have them, and she bought them for me. And so I'm reading about serial killers and John Wayne Gacy and Ed Gein and all these infamous, disgusting human beings. But I was fascinated with what is their brain like that they do this and they eat. I'll just say cannibalism so I don't sound gross or anything like. But you know, that to this day fascinates me.